So I went through the memory banks up here, and I went through the internet, with all the various tubes that you type your way through and all that, and make sure you don't end up in the wrong tube where you can't get out of there. But I looked at the LA Kings, and so the LA Kings, this jersey on Cool Hockey is $20 less. So it's $20 less than all the others on there. I was like, I don't even know. I don't want to know why this one's less money. But with the 40% off sale they were having, I thought, okay, I want to have the name of a player on the back that I think was underrated as a King. So when I get a name on the back of a jersey at this stage, I think it should be a player who's one of my favorites. And I think it's important too to make sure it's a player that maybe it's a bit of a conversation starter where people go, "What's a Radicalio?" And I go, "I'm glad you asked me that," and then I can inform them. But number 28 for the LA Kings was Duchesne. Steve Duchesne. Now, he didn't wear this jersey in particular, no. But he was an LA King more than once, and he was very much an underrated defenseman in his time. Because, again, we've been talking about underrated defensemen and great defensemen and all this. And I think that when you've got a defenseman who scores over 200 goals in his career, that's pretty good. And when you look at Duchesne, who was undrafted, so we've got the draft coming up in a couple of days. We've got all these discussions of who is and who isn't worth drafting. And then here's Duchesne, who wasn't drafted at all, signs as a free agent October 1st, 1984 with the LA Kings. Doesn't even debut for them until 86-87. I think it's an interesting story to tell. So Steve Duchesne plays 75 games as a rookie, 13 goals, 25 assists, 38 points. In the playoffs for the Kings that year, 5 games played, 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points. 87-88, 71 games played, 16 goals, 39 assists, 55 points. And in the playoffs, 5 games played, 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points. His first 2 years in the NHL, he has 29 goals. But again, this is during the 80s, right? So people are like, as a goal-scoring defenseman. Of course, there's tons of those now in the NHL. But again, one of the things I try to do with these career videos is I like to look at players who might get overshadowed. And Steve Duchesne's kind of a footnote and kind of a major story we'll get to. 88-89, he really came into his own. And again, we can discuss the Norris voting. So 79 games played, 25 goals, 50 assists, 75 points. He's 5th in Norris voting. So he has 20 more points, and all of a sudden, he's top 5 in voting for the Norris. This is a discussion to be had on whether or not the best defensemen are the guys who get those votes or the best offensive defensemen. And it is not necessarily the same thing. Because I've seen people say, well, if a defenseman gets more points, they're more useful. Oh, not always. There are plenty of defensemen I've seen in the NHL who've scored a bunch of points and yet drove the fan base completely mental when it came to their defensive play. 11 games played in the playoffs that year, 4 goals, 4 assists, and 8 points. 89-90, as the Kings are into the Gretzky era now, Duchesne on the point, 79 games, 20 goals, 42 assists, 62 points. In the playoffs, 10 games played, 2 goals, 9 assists, 11 points. 90-91, his last year as a member of the Kings, 78 games played, 21 goals, his third straight 20-goal season, 41 assists, again 62 points. In the playoffs, 12 games played, 4 goals, 8 assists, and 12 points. So the LA Kings, with an excellent offensive defenseman, decide, well, we're going to change things up. We got Wayne here. Wayne wants his buddy Curry in the lineup. We're going to have to pony up something to get Yuri Curry in the lineup, because with Curry and Gretzky together, that's got to mean a lot of goals and probably a Stanley Cup. It didn't, but you understood what the Kings were thinking at the time. May 30th of 1991, he's traded with Steve Casper and a 1991 fourth for Yuri Curry and Jeff Chikrin. So he goes to Philadelphia, 78 games played, 18 goals, 38 assists, I should say, for 56 points. Let me just go ahead and make that change there. So 18 goals, 38 assists for 56 points as a Flyer. Now, the Flyers in 1992 do not make the playoffs. So Bobby Clarke, not happy about not making the playoffs, got to make a deal. There's this guy, Eric Lindros, who won't sign with the Quebec Nordiques. They draft him first overall. So the Flyers and the Rangers both put together really, really good packages in trade for Eric Lindros. And the Nordiques take the unusual tactic of saying yes to both. So it ends up having to go to like an arbitrator that goes, wait, You traded the same guy twice? Yep. Look how much we got back for him by trading him twice. I don't know why other teams don't do this. We're shoo-in for the Stanley Cup. You can't trade the same guy twice. So, June 30th of 1992, the trade goes through. Okay? And the trade that's accepted is the one with Philadelphia. Duchesne is traded with Peter Forsberg, you may have heard of, Kerry Huffman, pretty good depth defenseman, Mike Ricci, pretty good two-way forward, Ron Hextall, decent goaltender, a 1993 first-round draft pick that became Jocelyn Thibault, not a bad goaltender either. Chris Simon was added after he was future considerations, as was a 1992 first, which became Nolan Baumgartner, so it was traded away, but that's a lot. And $15 million because that's a Dr. Evil type trade. Throw in $15 million and you get Lindros. All of those pieces were used to acquire one player. It didn't work out so well initially for Philadelphia, but boy did it work out for Quebec. And for Steve Duchesne, he gets back to 20 goal form. 82 games with the Nordiques, 20 goals, 62 assists, 82 points. In the playoffs, 6 games played and 5 assists. Now, the Nordiques, well, they're going to make some changes. And Steve Duchesne, well, he's got some value, and we want to toughen things up in Quebec. So Quebec trying to toughen things up a bit. Trade Duchesne with Denis Chasset for Garth Butcher, Ron Sutter, and Bob Basson. Now, Garth Butcher, at the time that he was traded to St. Louis, really it felt like Vancouver had kind of used him up. It did. It felt like Vancouver had just driven Butcher into the ground, so St. Louis gets him. And he wasn't in St. Louis that long, comparatively speaking, with how long he was in Vancouver, and then he gets traded off. So, Steve Duchesne goes to St. Louis. That first year plays 36 games, 12 goals, 19 assists, 31 points. So he misses over half the season. In the playoffs, plays 4 games, gets 2 assists. The following season, does pretty well. 47 games, 12 goals, 26 assists, 38 points. Again, finishes 5th in Norris voting as his points per game goes up a lot. 7 games played in the playoffs and 4 assists. So the lockout shortened season, he only missed 1 game. The season before, he missed over 40. But August 4th of 1995, he's traded for a 1996 second-round pick, Corey Sarich. The St. Louis Blues are an expensive team. They have a lot of high-priced talent. Duchesne is one of those high-priced talents. And Duchesne is traded out. So he goes to Ottawa. And in Ottawa, 95-96, 62 games played, 12 goals, 24 assists, 36 points. Ottawa, to that point, had never made the playoffs. 96-97, Duchesne is part of an Ottawa Senators team that finally makes the playoffs. 78 games played, 19 goals, 28 assists, 47 points. He has an impressive season considering all season there's rumors of him being traded. His contract comes to an end in 98, and the idea is, well, Ottawa, they're probably going to trade him, right? Probably going to trade him. He scores the goal that clinches Ottawa their first ever playoff berth. And then in the playoffs, plays 7 games, 1 goal, 4 assists, 5 points. So, good for them during the regular season. Helps the Ottawa Senators finally reach the playoffs for the first time. And I think it was year 5 or 6. And so, it looks like things are going well. But due to financial reasons, he goes back to St. Louis. So, August 25th of 1997, he was traded for Igor Kravchuk. Now, Kravchuk played pretty well for the Ottawa Senators. I liked Kravchuk. I did. But back in St. Louis, Duchesne, not too shabby. 80 games played, 14 goals, 42 assists, 56 points. In the playoffs, 10 games played and 4 assists. And then he becomes an unrestricted free agent. So who's going to sign him as a free agent? July 2nd of 1998, he goes back to the Los Angeles Kings. So it's an interesting career for Duchesne in that he bounces around a lot. I'm going to add this to the Journeyman playlist because he bounced around the league a lot. But certain teams had him more than once. St. Louis being the first, and then LA the second that had him more than once. He plays 60 games for LA, 4 goals, 19 assists, 23 points. So his offense is not where it was. And as a result, March 23rd of 1999, trade deadline, he is traded for Dave Babich and a 2005 round pick to the Philadelphia Flyers. He did not play for Florida. 11 games played for the Flyers, 2 goals, 5 assists, 7 points in the playoffs, 6 games played, 2 assists. But at this stage, it looks like Duchesne's best years are behind him. He was down to 30 points that season in total. So he's a free agent. Who's going to sign him? Well, Detroit, of course, because when a player's perceived to probably be done, Detroit says, you know what? Good veteran player, scores a bunch of goals on the blue line. We'll take him in. Now, obviously, Duchesne's playing with this guy named Nick Lidstrom, so the offense, they're not counting on that from him. But they signed him on September 3rd of 1999, meaning he was out there for a while as a free agent before Detroit picks him up. Played 79 games that first year, 10 goals, 31 assists, 41 points in the 99-2000 season. 9 games played in the playoffs, 4 assists. 2000-2001 only plays 54 games, 6 goals, 19 assists, 25 points. In the playoffs, 6 games, 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points. And I remember complaints about Duchesne maybe being a bit slower, and well, the offense isn't what it was, and this kind of thing. And that was a general complaint about Detroit at the time. When Detroit won, everybody would praise how good they were. But if Detroit failed, immediately people would say, well, they're too old. The first thing they've got to do is they got to change things because they're just too old. Well, 2001-2002, he played 64 games in his final year, 3 goals, 15 assists, 18 points. In the playoffs, something that hasn't happened throughout the rest of his career. 23 games played, 6 assists, wins the Stanley Cup. He can retire. He's won a championship. He's won a Stanley Cup. He is not he's not a core member of the Detroit Red Wings, but he is still part of a blue line that wins the Stanley Cup with the Detroit Red Wings. Finishes with 1,113 games played, 227 goals, 525 assists, 752 points. In the playoffs, 121 games played, 16 goals, 61 assists, 77 points. He appeared in All-Star games in 1989 with LA, 1990, again LA, and 1993 with the Quebec Nordiques. So he moved around the league a lot. The move from Ottawa back to St. Louis was more of a financial move than anything else. It's not that Ottawa didn't want to keep him. And St. Louis moving him to Ottawa was just because St. Louis had ADHD when it came to their contracts at the time and their players. Crazy watching the St. Louis Blues back then. I'll have to do a video on some point on just how St. Louis's identity was just all over the place throughout the 90s. And a lot of it had to do with money. And the contracts were being out there and just spending and all of that wonderful stuff. But Duchesne, very, very solid player. Those 227 goals. I understand that, there was some live puck years in here, but even after the dead puck years take over, he still scored the 19 goals in 96-97, 14 goals in 97-98. Not too shabby for a defenseman. And 227 goals is definitely respectable. So Steve Duchesne, that's why I picked him to be on the back of the jersey that I got with the Kings, because again, it is easy for fans growing up now to maybe see him in record books here and there with the LA Kings and say, oh, I don't know who he is. And again, getting overshadowed by Nick Lidstrom, by Rob Blake, by some of these guys who came along during his time with these teams, and yet he was pretty good on his own. And his overall resume, pretty strong, with 752 points in his career. So there you go. The career of Steve Duchesne, which, to me, again, it qualifies as a journeyman, because look at the amount of teams he played with. Look at the amount of times he moved around. To me, yeah, he qualifies for a THG Hall of Fame induction because he played a ton, he scored a bunch of points, and he won't get into the NHL Hall of Fame. We know this. And a very respectable career. Pretty solid all-around defenseman. And, yeah, again, when I said, I got to get if I'm going to get a Kings jersey, who do I want in the back? And I thought, Steve Duchesne. Because he won that cup at the end. I could have got Red Wings with Duchesne on the back, but to me, when I think about his career all the way through, I think of him as an LA King. It's because I'm old. This is what happens. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.